So continuing on with the next video for this chapter, the third infectious disease that we are going to be looking at is something called HIV AIDS. So one of the most common questions I get asked by students, are HIV and AIDS the same thing? If they are not the same thing, why are they then usually mentioned together or linked together? So in this video, we want to talk about it. What exactly is HIV? What is AIDS? And how they are actually and how they are connected or joined together. So first thing first, again, what is the causative pathogen? Before we understand the causative pathogen HIV, please understand that the name of the infectious disease is HIV, by the way, not AIDS. So HIV is the one that spreads from one person to another person. It's not AIDS that spreads, okay? We do not say that person A infected person B with AIDS. We will say person A infected person B with HIV. That's the terminology that we use. And the infectious disease HIV is caused by a virus. So in the previous video, we talked about how cholera was caused by a bacterium and malaria was caused by a protoctist called Plasmodium. So the third disease, HIV, is actually a disease caused by a virus, and the name of the virus is called the human immunodeficiency virus. Immunodeficiency is one word. I know, super long word, but you will have to memorize this name of the pathogen. The entire long name, human immunodeficiency virus. And notice the first alphabets for the name of the virus is HIV. That's where the name of the pathogen comes from. So if a question asks you what type of pathogen causes HIV, you can just say virus. But if they ask you for the name of the pathogen, you will have to mention human immunodeficiency virus. So then comes the more important question, how does HIV spread from one person to another? So before we understand how the disease spreads from one person to another, we must first know where can the human immunodeficiency virus be found in the person's body. If a person is said to be HIV positive, they are infected with HIV. So where exactly are the viruses, right? It can be found in various body fluids. What type of body fluids? Well, number one, they can be found in the blood vessels, just floating around in the plasma. As you can see, I'm just drawing out a simple blood vessel here. Red just means blood. Green colored dots imply that these are the HIV pathogens. They are not actually green in color, by the way. I'm just representing them like that. Now, the second one is if in a breastfeeding woman, the HIV pathogens can also be found in the breast milk. Now, in the reproductive system, the pathogen can be found in the semen for males. Semen is just a liquid that males produce during sexual activity. In females, the vaginal fluid also contains the HIV pathogen as well. Now, a very common question that I get asked is, what about saliva? And what about, let's say, tears or even sweat? Because these are also considered body fluid as well. The thing over here is the human immunodeficiency virus is not found in tears, saliva, sweat. Okay, they are only found in very specific body fluids, such as in the blood, breast milk, semen, and also vaginal fluid. The question then remains, how does it spread from one person to another? A lot of students will think, okay, well, the virus is in the blood vessels, so just like malaria, well, a mosquito will come and bite the person and then carry the HIV pathogen to another person. The good news here is no, that's not how HIV spreads at all. Okay, so it doesn't use a vector. One way in which it can spread is the infected person or the HIV positive person may donate blood, and inside their blood it contains the pathogen, and the blood together with the HIV pathogen is transfused into the other person's body. Now, another way that it can also spread is a contaminated needle. Let's say a hypodermic needle. When I use the word hypodermic needle, it means the needle used to poke into one person's blood vessels for many reasons. You see, needles are constantly used in the hospitals to give medications for one reason, but sometimes needles are also used by intravenous drug users. Okay, so these people are perhaps using certain types of recreational drugs and they have their own needles, but when they inject themselves with the needles come into contact with the pathogen. And as you can see there at the tip of the needle or around the needle, I've drawn some green colored dots to imply that there are some HIV pathogens there. And what happens is the contaminated needle is then shared with another person. Okay, the same needle is shared, and thus the pathogen enters another person's body. Now, in hospitals, we do not use the same needles for multiple patients. By the way, okay, needles are often one person. It's only a single use, and once the needle is used, it has to be thrown away. A different sterilized needle has to be used for another person. Okay, and in that case, we prevent transmission through needles. But like I said, in some cases, the person is using drugs such as heroin, even methamphetamine, and because they are sharing the needles with their partner or their friends, the use of the needle is quite dangerous in this case because it can also transmit HIV. These are blood-related ways in which the disease can spread. But I also told you that the HIV pathogen can be found in breast milk. So if a HIV positive mother is breastfeeding her child, the HIV pathogen from the breast milk can actually enter and infect her baby. So that is also another way that this can happen, and this is like breast milk related as well. Now, in the reproductive system, I told you that the HIV pathogen is found in the semen or also the vaginal fluid. So in this case over here, it can be transfer of contaminated semen and vaginal fluid through unprotected sex, either oral sex, vaginal sex, or even anal sex, by the way. So the pathogen that was in the semen or the vaginal fluid is transferred into the other person. Another way in which HIV can also spread, I'm also putting it over here, is through pregnancy-related areas. The pregnancy-related factor is if the mother has HIV while she is pregnant with her fetus, the pathogen can enter and infect the fetus through the placenta. Just like malaria, we saw this in malaria as well. So the HIV pathogen can also infect the fetus, and it can happen sometimes during birth because if the mother is giving birth to the baby, as the baby is passing through the vaginal canal, the baby comes into contact with the mother's vaginal fluid, and infection can also happen there. So there are many ways in which HIV can spread. We have divided into 4 ways: blood-related, breastfeeding-related, sex-related, and also pregnancy-related ways. Now, what are the symptoms of HIV? When a person is infected with the human immunodeficiency virus, under normal circumstances, it takes 6 months for the virus to settle in the person's body and officially, I use the word officially, but in that case, usually it takes about 3 to 6 months. We call it the window period. And if the virus is able to infect the person, now the person is said to be HIV positive. Even if the person becomes HIV positive, they will not show any symptoms in some cases. Or in some situations, they may also just show short-term flu-like symptoms such as fevers, body aches, those kind of things. So that's the thing. There is no unique symptoms when the person is first infected with HIV. In fact, based on my experience, volunteering in clinics when I was volunteering in clinics where we where we help test people with HIV, they did not know that they are infected with HIV because they were like, yeah, I just had like a mild fever, or they didn't even have any symptoms. The reason they came to get tested was because they had unprotected sex. And so they were a little bit perhaps paranoid and they wanted to find out for sure. That's the interesting thing about HIV, that it does not show symptoms immediately. So, if HIV merely has flu like symptoms, why is it serious then? So, HIV is serious because if you look at the name of the pathogen, human immunodeficiency virus, let's break it down. Human in this case means the pathogen affects the human species. Immuno means, well, related to the immune system. Deficiency means lacking or not enough, or, reducing, right? And of course, virus. So, what this thing means is it's a virus that makes our immune system weaker or not optimal. That is why the human immunodeficiency virus is scary. So, imagine for a second, okay, this is just a situation. You have a person over here who was infected with the HIV pathogen in January 2023. When pathogens enter your body, you have specific types of cells known as white blood cells to, combat these harmful pathogens. And one type of white blood cell is called the helper T lymphocyte. We are not going to delve into the function of the helper T lymphocyte yet because that will be in chapter 11, the next chapter. All you just have to understand right now is the helper T lymphocyte is just a white blood cell and it's part of your immune system. In fact, it's an important part of your immune system. What the HIV pathogen does in this case, it will enter the lymphocyte and it will insert its genetic material into the lymphocyte's nucleus. You don't have to know this process in detail. That's not important. So, what's the big deal if it inserts its genetic material into the nucleus? Well, then the helper T lymphocyte is forced to make more copies of the virus. And once it makes more copies of the virus will then bud out. It will bud out or just go out of the lymphocyte. And it can destroy the lymphocyte in two ways. Okay, number one, it causes the cell to burst because as the virus is going out of the lymphocyte, the cell surface membrane of the helper T lymphocyte is damaged. So it kills the lymphocyte in the process, or the lymphocyte will go through a process known as apoptosis. You don't have to know what apoptosis is, but what it just means is the lymphocyte goes into this mode where, look, I am being forced to manufacture and produce more viruses. I do not want to do this, so I'm going to self-destruct. And this is a self-defense mechanism that our cells have. So basically, what you just have to understand is the HIV pathogen destroys helper T lymphocytes in our body. Isn't that a bit ironic? Because lymphocytes are supposed to defend your body against pathogens, but the HIV pathogen is a particular virus that can directly destroy your defense mechanism, your immune system. So this graph, again, you don't have to memorize this graph, but I just want to look at it over here. So when the person is infected with the pathogen at first, the HIV pathogen will start to increase because it's entering the lymphocytes and the lymphocytes are producing more HIV pathogens in the person's body. And because the helper T lymphocytes are destroyed, their concentration will reduce. That's logical. But in most cases, most people, the HIV pathogen, our body will try to attack the pathogen and it will stabilize. So as you can see, after a certain amount of time, the HIV pathogen decreases and the helper T lymphocytes will increase again by mitosis. So this is good. So you might think, oh, this is fine. So our body is fighting off the infection, right? But this is where the danger begins. Why? Because during this period of time, what happens is the amount of virus does not decrease to zero. Some of the HIV pathogen will remain inside the lymphocyte and it is latent. or like in this case, it looks like it is sleeping inside the lymphocyte. Latent just means the virus is inactive, okay, during this moment of time. Now, latency of the virus can last for a period of, it can last for a few years, okay, and and as you can see, the virus is not zero, it is just at a constantly low concentration, and your lymphocytes are fine as well. During this period, the reason why I say it's dangerous is because, yes, you will not show any symptoms at all, but this person will be able to infect other people by unprotected sex, or contaminated needles, or blood transfusion, by donating their blood. They can still infect other people. That is why this period is dangerous, because the person might not know that they have HIV, but they have the virus which is in their blood system. Let's say after a certain amount of time, it reaches January 2025. Let's say 2 years have passed. Now, for reasons that we don't completely understand yet, okay, we have a few theories as to why this happens. Remember, the virus was latent, but suddenly something triggers the virus to become active again. Okay, and when the virus becomes active, it starts doing the same thing that it was doing earlier, which was destroying helper T lymphocytes. And the helper T lymphocytes are destroyed, and the helper T lymphocyte concentration will become dangerously low. This is where the true danger of HIV is, because when the amount of T lymphocytes, when your concentration of T lymphocytes is low, you are in deep trouble. Why though? Because remember, in January 2023, the person's immune system was okay because they still had a healthy concentration of helper T lymphocytes. You have to understand that you are constantly surrounded by pathogens in your daily lives. It's on the table, it's on your hand, it's in your nose, it's in your intestine. They are in your body, or they are just around your body waiting to cause infections. Not just the HIV pathogen, but other different types of pathogen, different types of bacteria and fungi in the environment. The reason why you don't fall sick is because your immune system was okay, and as the pathogens A, B, C, and D, which are different types of pathogens in the environment, as they try to go into your body is like, nope, you cannot infect our body because the immune system is functioning. I always tell this to my students. I say, the reason you are not sick is not because there are no pathogens in your body, but is because your immune system is functioning. There is a war going on in your body right now that you are not aware of, because your immune system is fighting it and making sure that any different types of pathogens that enter your body will not be able to cause any problems, right? So that's fine. But in January 2025, remember, the person's immune system is so weak because the helper T lymphocytes have been destroyed. And in this case, any different types of pathogens that try to enter the body is unable to fight it, okay? And this is called a rise in opportunistic infections. Opportunistic infections basically mean infections that normally will not be able to happen, but are now manifesting due to the weakened immune system. For example, you can get tuberculosis, which is caused by bacteria, and it can happen in your lungs. You can get toxoplasmosis in the brain. You may be getting Kaposi sarcoma, which is a type of skin cancer, but it's a skin cancer that is quite unique when a person has a weakened immune system. Or you can also get colitis, which is the infection of the colon or your large intestine. The thing I want you to understand is all these different infections are happening at the same time. You see, think back about the time when you fell sick. When you fell sick, you may have had a throat infection or an eye infection or a lung infection. It may have happened, pneumonia. But did these infections happen all at the same time? Perhaps not. But when you have a weakened immune system, you can have multiple infections happening at different parts of your body at the same bloody time. And that's the scary part, because many different pathogens, many different types of pathogens can now latch onto your body at different parts of your body and cause havoc. So HIV is serious because the pathogen weakens the immune system. They're unable to fight off infections, which cause an increase in opportunistic infections. And this is known as the acquired immune deficiency syndrome, AIDS. AIDS is a collection of diseases happening simultaneously due to your weakened immune system. That is the difference between HIV and AIDS, by the way. Okay, HIV will lead to AIDS depending on certain conditions, obviously, but HIV and AIDS are not the same thing. HIV is just an infection caused by the human immunodeficiency virus, and it destroys the helper T lymphocytes. However, when your helper T lymphocytes are destroyed, it weakens your immune system and your body will have the acquired immune deficiency syndrome. If HIV continues to progress, it will eventually lead to AIDS. So I tell this to my students, all people with AIDS have HIV, but not all people with HIV have AIDS. I hope you understand the difference between the two.